What's up, guys? It is Doug Las Vegas Bets here for another episode of the Doug Las Vegas Bets UFC betting show. This week, the UFC's in Winnipeg, my home country of Canada. We got a ton of Canadians on the card. Not the deepest card in terms of name value, but I'm still going to go over most of the fights and give my best betting spots on the card. So without further ado, let's get into it. We'll start off here with the main event as Gilbert Burns takes on Canadian Mike Malott in his home country. We'll start with Burns. He's been on a bit of a rough stretch, 22-9 overall in MMA, having spent the bulk of his UFC career up near the top. So the top of the welterweight rankings. Did have a bit where he was at lightweight, but I think he's much better suited for 170. He's going to finish things out at 170 here. Known for an elite jiu-jitsu background, earlier in his career he showed off some more of a submission game, and his second last win was still a arm triangle against Neil Magny, where he showed strong wrestling and good pressure on top, much like his second last win against Jorge Masvidal, where he controlled him over the course of 3 rounds. Although he is on a 4-fight skid and now 39, putting him in a pretty tough spot coming into this matchup. Although you look at those losses, it was Belal Muhammad the fight before he became champ, Sean Brady, who's now top 5. I don't know if he's actually ranked in the top 5, but I think Sean Brady is up there. He's a top welterweight is the point. Jack Della Maddalena, who went on to take the belt from Belal, and then Michael Morales, who beat Sean Brady, who is a top 5 welterweight, and in my opinion is the most dangerous of those top guys when it comes to challenging Islam for the belt. That being said, losing 4 in a row is never good. His durability is clearly waning, with the last 2 of those being knockouts. Even the Sean Brady fight, I think, in his prime, he would have been able to handle Sean Brady. I think the wrestling and the pressure just wouldn't have got to him as much. Still decent hands, decent power on the ground, but a far cry from the prime performances of when he dominated Tyron Woodley, or even those fights with Neil Magny and Jorge Masvidal. He hasn't looked the same as his prime years. I mean, you look at the names he's beating. Masvidal in his retirement fight at the time, I think he's coming back. And Neil Magny, who, Neil Magny's always been the gatekeeper, but he's always struggled with other high-level veterans. On the other side, Malott. Malott comes into this one at 6-1 in the UFC on a 3-fight win streak, including one knockout over Charles Radke and a couple decisions over Trevin Giles and then Kevin Holland. The Holland fight was kind of weird. Holland took a low blow and never really tried to get back in the fight. But I think over that fight and the Radke fight in particular, if you watch those, Malott took huge steps forward from his early career. The boxing is completely different. He is, very sharp with the counter combinations in the boxing. This showed against Holland. When Holland tried doing his lunge in to take advantage of the reach, Malott was very patient, waited, timed him well when he entered and caught him. And then obviously he has a very strong submission game and solid top game as well. We saw him control Neil Magny for about 2.5 rounds before gassing out there late in the third. Although I will say that was a fight where he didn't have much late fight experience, so I'm not overly concerned about him gassing. I don't think he has a good gas tank per se. But since then, we've seen him go 3 rounds with Trevin Giles and Kevin Holland at a lower pace, albeit, and more in the striking. But I think that's part of what he learned, is he can't wrestle that hard for 3 rounds. So as far as my pick for this fight, the odds were really wide at the start of the week. Malott was like a -600, and you could get Burns over +400. I think that was wide, but I think it's rightfully corrected to Malott more around the +300 range. Burns in the mid +200s. I think that makes sense. Malott is the much more technically sound striker, and although he's not that much younger when you look at the numbers on paper, Burns 39, he's 34. You look at him being 34 and you think, oh, well, he's probably on the down too. I think Malott's very different. You have to evaluate when he really started dedicating himself to this and the wear and tear on his body and the experience. I think people think he's younger because he's in a position of someone who is younger. If you look at him and you evaluate him like a 34-year-old, it's not going to look very good. He's not going to look like he's getting very far. But I don't think he is at the average stage of development as other 34-year-olds. For example, last week, we saw Kelvin Gastelum and Vicente Luque fight. They were both 34. they're at completely different points in their career than Mike Malott. They've taken way more damage. They're way more over the hill than Mike Malott. So to look at him as a 34-year-old and just say, well, he's 34, he's over the hill, I think that's oversimplifying things. It's not accounting for the nuance of the fact that he took a lot of years off in his mid-20s to coach and then came back at a bigger weight class. So I think he is still getting better even. I think his last few performances against Radke and Holland have been two of his best ones in the UFC. I think his striking's evolved a lot, and I think he has a good, well-rounded skill set. So for that reason, I'm going to pick Malott here. I'm going to pick him by decision. I think it's probably more likely that he gets the knockout, but when you're looking at the odds, he's minus 125 you can get him for the knockout, so you're putting a minus next to him to get a knockout when he's not necessarily a knockout artist. I mean, like I said, 2 of his last 3 wins came by decision. Against Trevin Giles, one of them. Giles not known for his durability, to say the least. So I don't know if his finishing ability is really going to translate to the top of the division, but I do think he's durable. He's very defensively responsible, as long as he doesn't gas out. I mean, the Neil Magny fight was a bad look for durability and gas tank, but I don't think that was like a matter of Neil Magny broke him per se. I think he just couldn't keep up the game plan that he was implementing there. So I do think he's going to make this one more of a striking match because he has the better wrestling than Burns at this point. I wouldn't be surprised to see a few grappling exchanges, but I do think this one mostly takes place in the feet and is a boxing match, where I give Malott the speed advantage. I think he's more durable. I think he's more defensively sound. So I do think he's justified as the favorite here. I'm looking to add him by knockout or decision to the parlay of the week, as you can get that at minus 200, and I really don't think he's going to submit Burns unless he knocks him out first. So give me Mike Malott by knockout or decision. My official pick will be Mike Malott to win a decision. Next, we'll go to the co-main event as Kyler the Matrix Phillips takes on Charles Air Jourdain in my favorite matchup of the card. I like both of these fighters. I think they're both fun, both super exciting. And we'll start with Kyler Phillips. The narrative around Kyler Phillips has always been pretty accurate, I feel, in that he is a world beater for the first round and falls apart later in the fight. This really has become a problem more in his recent performances against Rob Font and Vinicius Oliveira. He couldn't handle their pressure in rounds 2 and 3. And it first showed up really in the Raulian Paiva fight when he almost finished Paiva in the first round. And then a guy who clearly isn't on his level, and Raulian Paiva was able to put the pressure on and win rounds 2 and 3, which was a big concern. And he struggled to really close that hole over the next few performances, which is concerning, although he is still only 30. Charles Jourdain comes in also 30, a dangerous finisher. The guy has a nasty guillotine. He hits hard. He's explosive. Like we saw that big flying knee against Dave Grant, basically knocked him out before submitting him. Just good finishing instincts. He knows how to end fights. That being said, not the best minute winner. He's definitely hittable and can be held down. Was outlanded by Nathaniel Wood, although that loss aged pretty well. If a loss can age well, they can, of course. But, Nathaniel Wood's doing his thing up at 45. Still, it demonstrated that Jourdain's defense boxing maybe not the best. And then Shane Burgos was able to hold him down in the clinch and take a majority decision despite losing that third round where Jourdain was putting it on him. So I don't know that he's the best minute winner, but definitely a dangerous finisher. As far as my pick for this fight, I think this is a weird fight in how it can go. It's favored to go the distance, so I'll just start with my bet. My bet is Phillips by decision at plus 300, and that's a numbers play. So I'll say that's my pick, Phillips by decision, but I want to go more into the details of how this fight can play out different ways. I don't think it's a bold prediction to say Kyler Phillips wins the first round more often than not. I think he puts up a higher output. I think he can mix in the grappling early. I think he's got the footwork to avoid the big shots of Jourdain early. So I do think he takes the first round comfortably. The second and third rounds are where it gets tricky because I think Jourdain wins the third round at probably even a higher clip than Phillips wins the first round. And the second round is a little close. But I still think Phillips is arguably has more decision upside in this matchup, and you're giving me him by decision at plus 300 when Jourdain by decision is plus 160, because that second round is going to be close. I mean, Phillips still lands at a high clip. He lands almost 5 significant strikes per minute. He's a high output guy, despite not carrying that into the later stages of the fight. And I do think he can mix in his wrestling here, get some top time, and he's credentialed enough to avoid the guillotine on the ground from Charles Jourdain. That being said, I don't hate the idea of picking Jourdain to get a late finish here. I think he's going to put it on Phillips even more than these other guys. Like Vinicius Oliveira really didn't cut off the cage or challenge him late in that third round after hurting him. He just kind of followed him around and, kind of won the fight just by walking forward, and Phillips couldn't stand there with him because he didn't have the power to force him back. I think Jourdain can do something similar, but I think he's a little more creative with how to find strikes, how to find finishes. So I think Jourdain's live for the finish, but if the fight's favored to go the distance, then I lean Phillips in general if it goes the distance. And if you're giving me plus 300, I think that's serious value on his clear path to victory. Because Jourdain, he's been finished before, but he's been finished by John Silva. He was finished early in his UFC career, late in the fight by Julien. It's just, I don't see those finishes materializing for Kyler Phillips. I think this is a fight where if he wins, he's going to have to win by decision. So give me the plus 300 all day. I took 2 units on it. It's my prop play of the week. I can't wait for this fight. I think it's going to be an absolute banger. And I know that with this bet, if it reaches the third round, I'm going to be sweating because Charles Jourdain doesn't have boring fights, doesn't have boring rounds. So I'm excited for this one. Fight of the night prediction is this one as well. Another fun Canadian fighter here is Mandel Rat Garbage Nallo. I don't care what verdict or Tapology says. His nickname is not Mango. It is Mandel Rat Garbage Nallo. Is all I will acknowledge him as. Takes on Herbert. Sorry, slight tangent there. The veteran former Cage Warriors champ. We'll start with Nallo. He's coming in off the Contender Series. This guy's another action fighter. It's like I talked about with Charles Jourdain, but you can bump that up to another level here. Nallo's 36. He's got pretty good experience. He's fought in Bellator for a lot of his career, and he's never seen the scorecards. This guy he just goes for the finishes. He's got slick power. He's pretty fast. Good low kicks. He just stopped a guy with low kicks. Some decent submissions too. He's a well-rounded offensive fighter. Problem is, I don't really trust his defense. He's never been to the scorecards, which also means he was finished in all 3 of his losses. And, it was kind of an up and down run in Bellator. He had a couple of stoppage losses and never broke through to the upper echelon of Bellator. So I do have some questions about how he's going to handle UFC level competition. On the other side, Herbert comes in here. He has not been on a good run lately, but you got to consider who he's fighting, right? Like, he's coming off the split decision loss to Chris Padilla, who most thought beat Medeiros last week. So, that's 5 fights undefeated in the UFC. And it was a split decision with Herbert. In close with guys like Faraz Ziam, arguably beat Ludovic Klein. Even had the moment against Ilia Topuria, if you want to go all the way back to that fight. This guy has consistently fought close with high-level competition. Also hasn't been finished since the Topuria fight, so I think durability concerns are overblown. You can go back. He was also knocked out on the regional scene by Reese McKee and in his debut by Trinaldo, so he doesn't have an iron chin or anything, especially at 37. But the fact that he hasn't been knocked out since then, he's had plenty of high-level lightweight fights since then. I don't think the guy's chin is necessarily a serious issue. He's long, he's tall for the weight class, and when you give him these step downs in competition, they gave him Kama Worthy, and he handled them like you should handle one of those steps down in competition. He didn't fight close with a non-UFC level guy, he walked through him. So that's what I like about Herbert, is I think he can fight close with higher level guys, and I think he'll handle lower level guys like he should handle lower level guys. So with that, I picked against a Canadian here. So I've taken 2 underdogs against these Canadians. I took Herbert moneyline as my underdog best bet of the week. I don't dislike Nallo, but I don't get how you can justify him at that price when he's not that much older than Herbert. He's a year older than Herbert, doesn't have the big size advantage. He's usually a pretty big lightweight. Here he's at a reach deficit, at the experience disadvantage. I don't know. I think there's a lot to like about Herbert in this matchup. I'm not confident Nallo stays competitive in fights with Ludovic Klein and Faraz Ziam. I've seen Herbert do that. So there's an aspect of the proof is in the pudding, and I'm getting him as an underdog. I really think it's that simple in this one. If Mandel Nallo doesn't go out and finish him in the first round, what happens? Because I think Jai Herbert's live to finish him early as well, considering Nallo's durability issues. And I think the more the fight goes on, Herbert's going to find his flow. He's going to be able to keep that distance, and he's going to be able to sneak out a decision here on enemy turf. So at plus 155, again, I took 2 units on Jai Herbert. He's my underdog best bet of the week. And what would a Canada card be without some Jasmine Jasudavicius? She's back for a flyweight matchup against Karine Silva. For her last fight, she was on a 5-fight win streak. She's got this fantastic pace pressure wrestling. She'll just stay in your face. Not bad striking either. She uses her length well, but when she gets on top, she just exhausts, wears on fighters. She's got a good series of choke, does good damage with the elbows on top. Her last fight, I'm not overly concerned because I think Manon Fiore is very good. I think she arguably beat Valentina Shevchenko, although I don't necessarily disagree with the decision. The only thing that's really concerning is how it happened. Her getting knocked out early and being 37 years old, it's not a good combination, although I don't think she's taken too much damage. I don't think that it's all adding up over time or anything, because she did get into MMA late, did start training just in her mid to late 20s, I believe. So definitely not too much wear and tear there. I think it's just she got caught by a really good fighter thing. I'm still pretty high on Jasudavicius. She was on a good run, out grappling strong wrestlers like Miranda Maverick on her way to the top of that division, taking out former champ Jessica Andrade. On the other side, we got Karine Silva. She's coming off a loss to Maycee Barber. She traded wins and losses since starting her UFC debut with 3 straight submission wins. So obviously the danger is there with the submission game. Although the cardio's been a little bit of a concern, she slows down in some of these decisions, losing rounds 2 and 3 being the difference. But she does have a strong top game, good positional controls, just very aggressive hunting for the submissions, hunting for the finish, willing to sit on bottom to hunt for submissions at time even. Striking wise, swings big, not more power than most in the division, but all her KOs come earlier in her career. She hasn't KO'd anyone at the UFC level, so I don't think she's some dangerous knockout artist. As far as my pick goes, I'm picking Jasudavicius to get a decision here. I think she could get off to a rough start, but she has the ground game to avoid these early submissions. I think she's going to be the better wrestler to get on top. She's going to have more activity, definitely wins the later rounds, could even get a finish in the later rounds, I think. But I'll pick her to get a decision win here, just off ground control, pace, volume. I do like her in this spot. Next, we got a veteran versus prospect matchup at lightweight as Thiago Moisés takes on Gage Young. Now, Moisés is well-rounded. He's the veteran in this matchup. Anytime he's taken a step down in competition, he's looked pretty good. His last 3 wins, Trey Ogden, Mitch Ramirez, and the short-notice debut for Melquizael Costa, which aged well. Problem has been when he takes that step up in competition, even into that mid-range of lightweights, he's been losing. It was Benoit Saint-Denis a while back, then Ludovic Klein beat him, and most recently it was the overhand right knockout from Jared Gordon about a year ago. So, definitely on the decline. He is only 31, which I think is kind of deceiving because, we talked about it earlier with Malott's 34, but I think he's still getting better. This guy's been around for a while. He's had 15 fights in the UFC. I do think he's on the decline despite only being 31. I do think that's just a little bit deceptive that he's only 31 when I think he's a lot more weathered than that in fight years. Gage Young on the other side, he's just 25. He's had 2 UFC fights coming off his first win over Mahashate. I like him. He keeps a good high pace. He's well-rounded. He's not afraid to mix in the grappling. And, the debut loss to Evan Elder, I'm not too worried about that. I think Evan Elder's a good fighter. He's a difficult debut, and he matches Gage Young's skill set well in that he can keep that high pace. He can match the pressure. He also did have a good close fight with Quillen Salkild. Well, maybe not the closest, but he had a competitive fight with Quillen Salkild on Dana White's Contender Series a few years back. And, he's still just 25. This guy's getting a lot better, and he's already shown he's got the skills to compete at this level for sure. So with that, I'm going to pick Gage Young in this one. I'm going to lean with him to get a decision here. I just think overall his activity and well-roundedness, he's durable. I think it's difficult for me to find a clear path to victory for Moisés here when I can easily see Gage Young mixing it up on Thiago Moisés and taking more steps forward and having a career best performance here, breakout spot even. So yeah, I'm going to pick Gage Young to win a decision. The odds are pretty close right now, so I might get involved with a play on Gage Young money line. Stay updated on my social medias to see. Next, we'll go to the featherweights opening the main card as Dennis Buzukja takes on Marcio Barbosa. Start with Buzukja. He's coming back from about a 1.5 year layoff since a split decision loss to Francis Marshall, which dropped him to 1-3 in the UFC, although he's still relatively young at just 28, training out of that Longo camp with Rob, Aljo, and all those guys, Nazim Sadikov. Although he struggled in those UFC bouts. He was out-wrestled by Sean Woodson, which wasn't a great look. Out-wrestled, out-struck in that one. Finished early by Jamal Emmers. Got the job done against Connor Matthews, who was proven to maybe not be UFC level, to put it nicely. And then he lost the split to Francis Marshall, where he got hurt badly in the second round. I don't know why that was a split decision. I thought he pretty clearly lost. And he has been off for over 1.5 years. Taking on Mauricio Barbosa. Now, Barbosa is a guy I have serious concerns about, but he's a powerhouse early. This guy has serious knockout power in the first round, and he showed that in his Contender Series fight, dropping the Nomad Dave Wilson repeatedly until he eventually got the finish late in the first round. Why I have my concerns, I think he is a bad gasser. Anytime he's entered the second round, the fight's gotten dicey, getting finished twice and ending up going to a majority decision the third time. I think that issue is going to rear its head at some point in the UFC. I really think he's as simple a fighter to break down as that. He's a powerhouse early, swings big, gets most of these guys out of there. But it's going to get dicey when he gets to past that point. He does have a fight with Gabe Santos where almost immediately in the second round he got knocked out. Looking at this particular matchup, I do think Barbosa is going to be able to get him early. I have a hard time trusting Buzukja when we've seen him get finished early in fights before. Jamal Emmers knocked him out early, and then Francis Marshall, who's not necessarily known for his striking, was almost able to take him out in that one. So I do think Barbosa is going to land his shots and get him out of here early, although I am definitely not eager to parlay Barbosa at these straight odds. If anything, I would take his first round prop if it's at some slight plus money. If not, this fight is an easy pass for me. Hope that Barbosa gets it done early and we get another spot to fade him soon. In the feature prelim here at middleweight as Robert Valentin takes on Julien Leblanc. Valentin, an interesting fighter. He's 0-3 in the UFC with 2 knockout losses and the split decision against Torres Finney where he was taken down and controlled for all 3 rounds and somehow someone scored the fight for him. But I still think he's a decently dangerous guy. I don't think this is a fighter you can just look at and go, oh, he's 0-3 in the UFC. He's garbage. This is a guy with decent punching power. We saw him get an early knockout in his first fight on The Ultimate Fighter. But I was even more impressed with his second fight where he got the submission win over Paddy McCrory. McCrory's a solid fighter in Cage Warriors. He fought and won on the season of Contender Series. Maybe not the most exciting guy. He didn't end up getting the contract, although he won. But I think dispatching of him like that in the first round was impressive. Obviously, the guy's got power with the early knockout wins. Struggles with getting controlled in the wrestling. And then was trying to stand and bang with Atabak Gauthier, which maybe showed some fight IQ issues. Overall, though, I don't think he's that bad. Julien Leblanc makes his debut here. He's decently well-rounded, shown some solid striking and opportunistic submissions as well. Has a win over UFC vet in Darian Weeks. Also losses to guys like Joel Bauman. I'm not overly sold on this guy really being UFC level. I think he's here because he's Canadian, which kind of hurts to say because it's the Canadian card. But yeah, the line was even to start the week, and it shifted towards Valentin, and I agree with that. I think it's difficult to back a guy who's 0-3 in the UFC, but I think Valentin, in those 3 losses in the contender, or not the contender series, the Ultimate Fighter, showed that he has a skill set that at least makes him dangerous at this level, where I'm just not sure Leblanc really poses much of a threat to higher level guys. So with that, give me Robert Valentin. I'll take him to get a submission in the first round. Next, a pair of heavyweights is Tanner Boser's back to take on Gokhan Saricam. We'll start with Boser. He had a stint in the UFC before where he was at heavyweight, did all right, dropped down to 205, ended up getting finished by Iwan Cutelaba and let go from the promotion, went out, got a win, and now he's back because they evidently needed some Canadian talent for this card. Overall, he's a good grinder, solid wrestling, keeps a good pace, good cardio. He's not small for a heavyweight, even though he moved down to 205. I don't necessarily look at him and think he's like a 205er. He's obviously he can make the weight, but he's not an undersized heavyweight. I'm not overly concerned about his durability because Cutelaba got him out of there early. Cutelaba's a hard hitter, and we didn't see him get finished a few times at heavy. We didn't see him get finished much at heavyweight. Sorry. Gokhan Saricam, he comes in making his debut here. Dangerous, powerful kickboxer, solid experience in the PFL. Although he never really broke through to the top of that, because despite the solid kickboxing, the power, if it was just striking matches, he would have done a lot better. My problem with him is he doesn't have much urgency when he's in the clinch or wrestling exchanges. He'll just get held and kind of wait for an opportunity or wait for a separation. And that cost him the decision against Oleg Popov. It cost him a few other spots. So I'm not overly high on him as a fighter. For that reason, I'm going to pick Tanner Boser here as the slight underdog. Boser has shown he can have success at the UFC level. He's shown that he can grind out decisions. He's showing he's willing to hold guys in these bad positions and make it not necessarily the most exciting fight, but get the job done. And I think that's might be what he has to do against Saricam, and I think Saricam's the kind of guy who's going to let it happen. So give me Tanner Boser to grind out a decision here. Jumping down now to the flyweights as Mitch Raposo takes on Allan Nascimento. This is a fun fight. Raposo kind of revived hope for him in the UFC with his last performance against Azat Maxim after a couple disappointing showings getting into the promotion. There was some hype around him coming out of that New England regional scene. He was on the Ultimate Fighter. He was the first pick of his season. And then he ultimately ended up losing his first fight there to Ludwig Schulainen and losing on the Contender Series to Jake Hadley. Although he was super young, I think he was just 22 when he was on the Ultimate Fighter and Contender Series. Maybe he was 23 at that point. But he's clearly gotten better since then. The Azat Maxim showing was a career best performance where he really showed improved striking and the ability to mix in that nice grappling game. So this is a guy to watch as he gets better. I don't think he's as bad as his UFC record shows just because he was given some tough matchups at the start. I think Andre Lima, I'm very high on Andre Lima, future guy who I think we're going to be seeing at the top of the rankings. And Sumu Derji, a very difficult matchup with his length and striking ability, especially for a guy earlier in his career. On the other side, Allan Nascimento, he's a very talented fighter at 34. He struggled to consistently get in the octagon, had a couple layoffs. So that shootbox gym coming off a nice submission win over Cody Durden where it hurt him and sunk in the nice choke. I think he's got a very good ground control game, not necessarily the best wrestler, but when you see him get on the ground, he can get these positions and start holding or working for submissions against other solid grapplers like the Jafel Filo fight. So with that, I like Nascimento here. I get why the price shifted a little bit towards Raposo. He's the younger guy who's improving. Allan Nascimento's 34, hasn't been able to consistently get in the cage. But I still think Nascimento is a very talented fighter, a tough matchup. I don't think Raposo is going to be able to have success on the ground. I think if he shoots, it's going to be a mistake, and Nascimento is actually going to end up taking advantage of those. I do think Raposo can probably have some success in the striking, but I think just the way these guys are, it'll end up one of them will be shooting and it'll turn into a grappling match. So with that, give me Allan Nascimento to take a decision win here. I do think in the grappling, he's just going to end up having the more control time, having the bigger moments, maybe going for submissions, getting off more ground and pound. So give me Allan Nascimento here to get a decision win. And the last one I'm going to go over today, Mark Vologdin and John Castaneda, another veteran versus prospect one. We'll start with John Sexy Mexi Castaneda. He has had a solid run in the UFC. He's 4-4 with the promotion, having beat guys like Mr. Perfect, Kyung Ho Kang, Moin Gafarov, got the finishes over Miles Johns and Eddie Wineland. Although he hasn't had the most success when you step up in competition. I mean, Nathaniel Wood, a loss that aged well. Daniel Marcos is tough, still undefeated, or was undefeated at the time. And Chris Gutierrez, just a split decision. We've seen Gutierrez pushing close to the rankings before. He's fought in a main event before. So, he doesn't take bad losses necessarily, and he has solid wins. I think Miles Johns is a solid fighter. That win aged well. He broke him down late in the third round. Kyung Ho Kang's always been solid. Moin Gafarov's a difficult out too. On the other side, Vologdin. He comes in off a wild Contender Series fight. Had a lot of quick knockout finishes before that, showing his dangerous striking, dangerous striker. But then he fought Adrian Martinetti, and they went to war. Vologdin took some serious punishment in that one, but was able to keep firing back and make it competitive enough that both guys actually got a contract. And with Vologdin being just 25 years old, I see why they wanted to give him a chance. The guy's exciting, durable, improving, and that was a tough matchup on Contender Series. They signed the other guy too, so these are two guys that you're going to see in the UFC. I think we're going to see Vologdin improve and have some fun fights in the UFC. That being said, right now I'm going to pick John Castaneda. I just think he's more proven against the better competition. And Vologdin is losing on Contender Series, while Castaneda is losing competitive decisions in the UFC. Like I said, I do think Vologdin's opponent's going to go on to be good. I don't think it's a bad loss. But there's still a difference in losing in that spot and losing in the UFC. And again, it's a proofs in the pudding spot where these guys are aligned so closely. I've seen Castaneda take out UFC level competition. I've seen him submit Miles Johns, take out Eddie Wineland in the first round. I haven't seen how Vologdin's going to handle this level of competition, and I haven't seen how his best performance in Martinetti, which was a loss, is going to handle the competition. So I think there's just a lot less question marks on the Castaneda side. I think he's a solid fighter. He's not a guy I would look to fade as is. I'm not concerned about his durability. The only knockout loss to Daniel Santos, who is a solid fighter, and Castaneda hurt him early in that fight. So I like Castaneda to put the pressure on, mix in the grappling in this one, and take a decision win here. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of the Doug Las Vegas UFC Betting Show. Make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, go follow me on Twitter and Instagram to make sure you get my official plays. I've already posted, and I mentioned the underdog and prop play of the week this week, Herbert, Kyler Phillips by decision, but I am still going to post my 3-leg parlay for the event, so make sure to go check that out. One final time, thank you for watching, and I do hope you enjoy these fights this week in my great home country.